Joel Embiid has been one of the more controversial figures across the entirety of the NBA for the entirety of his NBA career. This is especially the case when he's speaking on the microphone, and he recently made waves when discussing Jayson Tatum and the Boston Celtics while on the Drew Hanlen Check Ball podcast that most recently dropped. In this video, I want to talk about what specifically he said that has rubbed people the wrong way, where I think he went a little bit wrong in what he's saying, and why this is just the Joel Embiid experience that we all should be buckled up for at this point. So to start off with the initial quote, Joel Embiid said that Jayson Tatum has a super team and, quote, if I go 5 for 20, we get blown out. And to that I say, where is the lie here? That is the reality of the Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics. And to call a spade with this specific situation is we just watched an NBA Finals in which Jayson Tatum was probably the third or fourth best player on that team, and they still found a way to get the job done. Now, I'm not taking away the championship. There's no doubt that they got the job done, but I do think this is much more of a testament to how well constructed that roster is and how Jayson Tatum is allowed to have his ebbs and flows as a player. Now, it is also fair to point out that Joel maybe should not be the guy speaking on the subject, that we do know the lack of playoff success that constantly gets thrown in his direction, and this is something that Joel hears in full force. In fact, he has something to say about that as well, and to dive into that comment here, he said that, quote, I like when people tell me I can't win because it makes me push myself to be better. I'm probably the most hated guy in the league. I don't know what there is to hate about me. That's the motivation that I need. So I do like a little bit of this self-reflection from Joel Embiid. And to be honest, whatever motivates a guy, that's completely fine with me. And for Joel specifically, it's no surprise that he is a guy that feeds into what the haters are saying and looks at the comments. He has been one of the more online-friendly NBA players of our entire lifetimes, and this has been the case since he came into the league. But there were a number of other comments that seem to rub people the wrong way as well. So I did want to jump on a couple more here. This one specifically really reminded me, which I think Joel Embiid, this dates back to the regular season, where he kind of discussed why people talk about it as much as he does. And he went with the quote saying, I don't know where that came from, and this speaking about his ducking competition accusations. He said, that's funny because every single team that I play against, I think I dominated and we win, and I put up the numbers necessary to win. I think that's why you can't read too much into it, because one of the main things that I see is as soon as you use the name Joel Embiid, that's going to get a lot of likes, that's going to get you a lot of money. So as long as my name has a chance to help somebody make some money, then I'm for it. Keep trolling. I like it. I love it. And he has his name as Joel Embiid on Twitter for a reason. This is a guy who constantly has been doing it. And let's not forget that this is the same player or same person that was shooting his shot at Rihanna and Kim Kardashian before he ever stepped foot on an NBA floor. Now, I thought this was a pretty cool setting to see Joel Embiid sit down with Drew Hanlen. There's a really strong connection there between the two of them, and Drew deserves a ton of credit for having Joel Embiid reach the statistical heights that he has as an NBA player. That this is a guy who has won MVP, was on pace for his second consecutive award in that category last year, averaging 34.7 points per game, 11 rebounds, 5.6 assists, 1.7 steals, 1.2 blocks. Just absurd level of talent for a guy of his size, and really for any player there. But Joel knows that it is the playoff success that will ultimately define him there. And he had a comment that I did really like here that I want to specifically point out regarding his MVP. And what he said to Drew was specifically Joel telling Drew Hanlen that he would trade his MVP trophy for one healthy postseason run. And why that's particularly cool to me is he did not say one championship. He just said one healthy playoff run. And boy, do I hope that is the case for Joel, because I want nothing more to see the Joel burn the world tour after the fact. And in his defense, I understand that he has to wear some of this, that you can rightfully point out that he probably could use to cut a little bit more weight. When you compare what he looked like in college to what he looks like now, it's pretty night and day in how much bigger he is, although I think some of that is more natural than people give credit. But the hard part of what the balance is with Joel Embiid is when you have these nagging injuries, when you're having knee issues, it's not the best idea for your long-term outlook to be out there running suicides all day or running sprints on the court. You have to find this balance of taking care of yourself, giving yourself ample time to rest while still staying in peak fitness. It is not an easy dance to have, and I think people overlook that a lot of times in the criticism of him. Like, for example, for this specific season where he went down with the meniscus tear, then people are critical of him not being in shape. What did you really want him to do over that length of time, where the best course of action for him was to rest up and make sure that knee got healthy? So I do feel bad for Joel in that overall challenge. And when you think back to the list of injury histories that he has gone through, it has been some freak things. I mean, we're talking about him breaking his face on Markelle Fultz's shoulder, or we're talking about stomach issues, or breaking his face twice, the orbital fracture, the torn ligament in the thumb. These are all really strange issues that I don't think directly translate to him not taking care of his body in the way it is oftentimes portrayed. Now, for Joel, it's clear that he's very self-aware and very aware of the perception of him. I mean, we saw the quote of him saying that he's probably the most hated guy in the league, and I like how he elaborated, saying, I don't know why, I'm cool. I don't know why there is this hate about me. I feel like a lot of people can relate to my story and what I've been through. And that's one of the cooler aspects of Joel Embiid that I don't think gets enough appreciation, is this is a guy who really has chased a dream and succeeded by every single definition of it. That he left Cameroon at the age of 16 to come to America to pursue his basketball career and has made absolutely the most of it. A guy who has set up his family for generations to come from a wealth standpoint, who has got himself out of another country, built an entire life here by, starting a family, getting married, having a child, all these things. And he's been a guy who, in this era of NBA basketball, where loyalty is a pretty foreign subject, Joel's been a guy who has stuck it through. That he has lived through so many eras of Sixers basketball and been the stabilizing force of the franchise beyond anything just on the court. I mean, we're talking about him living through a number of general managers at this point, whether it be the Sam Hinkies of the world, the Brian Colangelos of the world, the Elton Brands, the Daryl Morey, even the coaches when you go through the Brett Browns, the Doc Rivers, now Nick Nurse, and think about all the players that he has been through, from Ben Simmons to Jimmy Butler to James Harden, from Marco Bellinelli to everyone in between, all the process era guys you want to throw out there. Shout out Isaiah Cannon, Tony Roten, you name it, all those guys. At the end of the day, it's just been Joel Embiid representing the Sixers organization. And I do hope that he's actually being rewarded with that. And you can squint and hope that that is the case, that I do think that, for starters, there is a guy like Tyrese Maxey who clearly has established himself as a key piece of this franchise. And, of course, the big news of this offseason with Paul George coming to this team. So I do hope, for all this talk of there being a super team at this point in time, maybe this will be the cure for Joel Embiid, and he has the guys to come with him. And I do think it's fair that both these things can be true. That, yes, Joel Embiid needs to be better in bigger moments, but he also hasn't had the running mace to help drive things. And he kind of addressed that a little bit on this podcast when speaking about how serious the injuries were. And I did think that this quote was really notable here when talking about, how healthy he truly was in last year's playoff run. And what he said is, Joel Embiid was telling Tyrese Maxey in the Knicks series that he wouldn't be able to last more than 2 or 3 quarters. And this was a pretty cool interview where he really opened up about things, that he was having to get his knee drained after and before every game, that he couldn't even jump, he couldn't even run out there, and there were many games where it looked like he could not play at all. And shout out to Drew Hanlon, who very openly said how he's the hardest guy on Joel that there is, and how he's still asking, I need 15 points this quarter, I need this, you got to be out there. And to Joel's credit, he was. And I think that gets lost in the subject a lot, is that for Joel Embiid, you can be critical of all these factors. This dude fights through it. And to contrast him, I know we just got Paul George in the conversation here. To take a look across the country in Los Angeles, a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who I'm not doubting the injuries by any means, he's just non-existent there, that he does not try to fight through. He's not on the court playing at less than 100%. And I understand your body is your body, and I'm not questioning a guy if you can't play, but I think there's been a lot of games where Joel probably shouldn't, and he still did. And you can look at that as an indictment on the Sixers organization, but the bottom line is I do respect the guy for fighting and giving whatever he has on the table. Now, as far as this conversation as a whole and all these comments that did come out, I do understand the frustration from the Joel Embiid angle. That at the end of the day, there probably is a little bit too much access to this guy. I think that's coming with him playing in the Olympics and all these new media opportunities and everything else. But this is kind of the pushback that I feel bad for current athletes, and particularly in this evolving media world, that people want athletes to be honest, but then when they are, they don't like that either. That for Joel Embiid, he's a guy who's a little bit too honest for his own good. That these are all answers that I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's lying, but he certainly could make his life easier if you give a little bit better coached up PR answer, such as, shout out the Celtics. They built a great team. They found guys who bring out the best in Jayson Tatum, and they earned that championship. There's nothing wrong with saying that, even though if you do want to swing it as he has a super team, if I shot 5 or 20, we would get blown out. I understand your point. You're right there. I also understand why that fires people up, particularly when it is coming out of the mouth of Joel Embiid there. So ultimately, that's kind of the Joel Embiid experience. And honestly, having a chance to watch this guy for the entirety of his career, I still kind of applaud that I have seen this growth and maturity from him. That I do remember the first days of him when he arrived in Philadelphia and the young, just immature human being that he was at that point. This is the same guy that they had all these health foods brought in, that they had him housed in this beautiful apartment building as he was kind of getting adjusted to Philadelphia. They would check back at the end of the week, and all those health foods would still be there, and they would have a fat room service bill for a ton of Shirley Temples and junk food that he was calling there. And I remember how maddening that was for the Sixers organization. It's a miracle that he has grown into the player that he has been, but the Sixers would not even remotely be relevant if that was not the case. Plenty of players would have rolled over and quit on this organization in a way quicker than Joel ever did, and shout out to him for sticking it through. I do hope he is rewarded with the roster around him that is built to maximize him, and I do hope he gets that lucky break where he has one healthy playoff run. We will see where things happen from here. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more Joel Embiid quotes to break down on this channel here. I do have a feeling that the access is going to continue to turn people off of Joel as there's mics continually shoved in his face, as is the case in this current sphere. But I'll be here to break him down at all. So appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop it a like and any comments you have below. And I'll be talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.